Hey there. How's your week? I hope it's great. It is Wednesday, which means it's time for another edition of WestEdge Wednesday. All of the talks and programming from the theater presented by Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home at the WestEdge Design Fair, held back in November of 2025 from Barker Hangar in Santa Monica. And today, you are going to hear Rebuilding LA. Resilience, Innovation, and Design for the Future. This was one of 4 programs this year. Out of 10, 40% of the programming was geared towards this idea of rebuilding, innovation, rebuilding smartly, hardening enclosures, coming back from the horrendous wildfires of January 2025. Join this incredible group for an inspiring panel discussion exploring how Los Angeles is rebuilding stronger and smarter in the wake of recent wildfires. Industry leaders and design innovators will share new strategies in resilient home construction, cutting-edge materials, and design solutions that protect against fire while honing the spirit of California living. Discover how resilience and creativity are shaping a safer, more sustainable future for our communities. This was moderated by Kelly Phillips Badal and features William Hefner of Studio William Hefner, Jamie Rummerfield of Jamie Rummerfield Interior Design, and Gwen Sukeena of Sukeena Design Studio. This is at times a hard conversation to listen to because of the sheer volume of loss and the personal nature of that loss. But it's also a very important conversation and one that needs to keep happening. So for that, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, for sponsoring the theater and allowing this type of programming to take place. Thank you, Kim Gordon of Kim Gordon Designs, for crafting such a remarkable space. And you're going to hear it all right after this. This was the second year that Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, sponsored and presented the theater at the WestEdge Design Fair. So appreciative to them, in addition to everything that they do for sponsorship. They also brought in partner Best Buy, partner Geek Squad, Hisense, and made possible a video wall to Kim Gordon's design that just, it made it pop. And I think that it's so important to understand that the most important word in design today is service. You know, product is important, price is important, selection is important, but service, stellar service, makes all the difference in the world. And if you're a designer, if you're in the trade, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home has a simply remarkable trade program. Their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade-up program unlike any you've ever experienced before. You have a chance to earn 3% in Best Buy e-gift cards or 2.5% in a reward check for every qualified and delivered sale, in addition to trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, so much more. I can't even tell you everything here. So make sure to check them out. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, for your sponsorship and partnership at the WestEdge Design Fair this year, and for presenting WestEdge Wednesdays, which you're about to hear right now.
Thank you, Josh. And thank you all for being here too. And thank you everyone for coming out for the last panel of the day, arguably the best panel of the day, clearly. I just had to say that in the mic, yeah. I just had to say that on the record so that, you know, it gets picked up by the podcast, it gets picked up by the camera and everything like that, just to set the tone right, just to set the bar really high. But anyway, thank you all again. I'm Kelly Phillips Badal from Luxe Interiors and Design. I'm our Los Angeles editor and our Southern California editor. I also handle our Colorado and the Rockies edition. And I'm so excited today to be talking about innovative ways to rebuild LA, because to me, that's just something we can't talk about enough. If every single program at WestEdge was about that, I would attend them all. There's a million ways to talk about this because we're all still in it as a community, and I feel that very passionately. So I'm so excited to have 3 people here bringing 3 really different and cool and unique and innovative perspectives about that to us. So would love to have each of you introduce yourselves briefly, who you are, your firm, and then we'll dive right in. William, let's start with you.
It's on. Oh, it's on. Thank you. Anyway, I'm William Hefner. My company, Studio William Hefner, we do architecture, interiors, and landscape here in Los Angeles and in Santa Barbara. That's what we do. That's us. So,
And there's a lot more to be said, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to it. And you asked me the right question.
Jamie.
I'm Jamie Rummerfield. My design office is Jamie Rummerfield Interior Design, and I am a co-founder of Save Iconic Architecture.
And my name is Gwen Sukeena. I'm with Sukeena Design Studio, and I am an interior designer.
Fantastic. And Gwen, I actually want to start with you because, we're coming off of these January wildfires. We're coming up on the year, I don't want to call it like an anniversary of sorts, but we're there. We're coming up on that point where this happened to our community. And you are directly involved. And in fact, your own story is kind of a lemons into lemonade version of events, if I could call it that. So I want to thank you in advance for sharing some of your story with us. But I wondered if you'd do just that. Walk us through the journey that you have taken in Altadena in particular, as both a designer and a homeowner. Go.
Okay. I'll try and do this without crying.
Wait, and hold on. You got to Beyonce your mic, too, so that we can all hear you.
Can you hear me? So my partner and I, we had been looking to purchase a home for probably 3 to 4 years. And over a 3 to 4 year period, we had maybe put in about 4 offers in on houses over that period. He was very picky on which house we put in offers, and so it was just a very painful process. We finally found our house, and 10 days after we closed and we moved, and 10 days after putting our last box in the house, our house burned down. So it was devastating beyond words, and just for our whole community. As some of you may know, I have a love of old things, and the thought of building new just did not sit well with me. There's something about something old that has so much spirit and life, and when you build something new, however beautiful it is, and you get to create your own life, there's still a little soul missing. So we just didn't know what to even do at that point. We decided to buy a trailer. We wanted to be on our property. We were commuting from Long Beach. We found an Airbnb pretty quickly, but it was really far away, and I was in the middle of the showcase house, as some of you may know. So it was awful. But we bought a trailer and we moved back on our property. And I had gone to Pasadena Architectural Salvage one day and spoke to my dear friend Wendy, and I told her that we had lost our house, and she said, "Don't give up hope. My husband has moved homes before, and maybe this is a possibility that you and Jacques might be able to do." And the light went off, and it was a very happy feeling, but a very anxious feeling too, because I didn't want to go through that 4-year process again. That Jacques was so picky about buying a house. I thought the likelihood of finding a house that someone is going to tear down, this is not going to happen, and it's just going to be a nightmare. Anyway, we ended up finding this architect had put a list of homes together that were being torn down, and I kind of started sifting through them, and I have my real estate license too, so I was able to reach out to owners and do my sleuthing. And the second home that I ended up reaching out to the owners, we connected, and they were going to put a sixplex on this property. And it was this old home. The exterior did not look like it. The exterior looked really bad, but the interior, the bones were just phenomenal. The original quarter-sawn oak all over the walls. They were at least 5 feet high. The original push buttons, the original wallpaper was still on the wall. So these things that I just could not believe had been preserved since 1910. And of course, the minute you walk in, when you don't have a house and everything burned down, you're a little overwhelmed. So I was in tears crying, and I thought, is this really going to be a possibility for me to be able to call this home? We negotiated, Jacques and I and the owners. When you're buying a home, and for $1 or whatever it is, you have to hire an attorney to negotiate and write a contract. So we had reached out to them to do that, and they decided to move forward and allow us to move this home. They are builders, so we had a really tight schedule. We had less than 3 months to dismantle the house, break down the house, and move the house within this short time period. So we started negotiations in June, and we had to move the property the first week in August. There were probably 2 or 3 times that we almost lost the house. One time they had dollars in on paint, so all the stuff from upstairs, they pack everything, all the windows, all the doors, they label everything, wrap everything. And in the middle of doing
That's actually so cool to hear.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, I don't know anything about the breakdown of a house, but just to hear that is kind of awesome.
It's really cool. And so the owners call us one day and they said, you can't touch the house anymore. We just realized that the first loan that we have, the house is collateral, and you've got to stop. And so we were like, how is this happening? And so Brad Chambers, he is kind of overseeing all the project, and he was fortunately a banker and very well versed. And he's like, you can gut a house, even though the house is collateral, you can still gut it and remodel it. And so we were like, oh, okay. So then we kind of kept going further, and so we gutted the inside, and then that was kind of one hurdle. And then the next weekend they call us and they said, we haven't secured our loan for the $9 million loan in order for us to start doing the construction. So you can't touch the outside. And we were, again, another 4 weeks in, and we're like, there's no way that in 2 weeks we could finish dismantling the exterior of the home, the upstairs, and move it. And so we thought we were going to lose the house again. And then the following Monday, they were able to secure their $9 million loan. And so they call us and they're like, okay, you can keep dismantling. So we moved forward, and and we ended up moving this house. It took 4 days to move the house. We cut it up into 4 different sections. And actually, we moved it over a 3-day period. We did 2 sections of the house the very first night. And we didn't sleep for 4 days. It was grueling and exciting. So they get the house there. Then we have to lift it up on these things called cribs. And they keep it up on these cribs, and then they build the foundation underneath it. And once the foundation gets signed off, the city signs off, then we can lower it onto the foundation and then start working on the house. So that's kind of the process, but that is where we are right now.
Well, and what I want to emphasize here is, too, that, Gwen not only found a house that was marked for demolition, she saved a house and managed to get it across town, and it has a whole cool history to itself. And I know that this is going to speak to Jamie's preservation of soul as well. But hang on, we just have to applaud the fact that you have a house. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah.
And that was one heck of a journey. So thank you so much for sharing so much of that with us. And what I wanted to emphasize too is, I know moving, hold on. We're at the airport, we have to allow for jets. But, moving houses has not been a new thing. It happens all the time, and it happens all across the U.S. But I think it's something that a lot of people haven't thought about, especially in regard to how can we help people in these communities get back into houses. which is why I love hearing your story of like, yes, this is possible. Was it easy? No. Could it possibly be easier? Arguably, yes.
Yes.
But we'll get into that too.
Yeah, right.
But to segue in, like, Jamie, I know this is something that speaks to you as well. So I just wanted to pull you in to say, like, you're an incredibly prestigious designer. You mentioned Save Iconic Architecture already. And I thank you for all the work that you have done to pull people's attention to properties that are marked for demolition, things that should be saved, the incredible architectural history that we have here in Los Angeles. I feel like you are waving the flag over that all the time. So thank you. But also, I wanted to ask you the ways that you kind of jumped into action after the wildfires, because that's kind of a multi-part question. But there's something in particular that you put together that I'm really excited about, and I think you are as well. Please do tell.
Indeed. You know, these fires caught everyone by surprise in so many ways, and knowing so many friends, colleagues, clients who are impacted, including myself, my kids' schools burned down. And, you know, we have friends here, Michelle and Heidi, their design office and their homes burned down. And right out the gate, we started getting flooded with information to Save Iconic Architecture about questioning if something has survived architecturally wise. And I thought that was interesting that people felt that architecture or landmarks were just as important as they were like personal possessions, because some people love certain houses so much. So when the Will Rogers estate we found out that had burned down, we started just sharing the status. At the time, the Getty Center was at risk. And we just real time started kind of reporting about architecture that we were either that was saved or lost in the wildfires. And that got a huge response. And actually, people would, I'm having a Top Gun moment. Hold on. Top Gun flashbacks here. So yes. So from there, my friends Michelle and Heidi, again, they reached out to the Design Leadership Network right away for support, just to see how our partners or people could come together, which automatically, amazingly, in Altadena and Palisades, the way the community came together so swiftly and quickly, and it was incredible to see. But also, the Design Leadership Network brought a call to action as well to bring professionals together here in Los Angeles to somehow bring support. We weren't sure in what way, but as we started discussions around the fires and how we could best help, we actually created a design vision team. And it was all about just what if, or like, what would be the most ideal scenario that could come out of these wildfires? And there's tens of thousands of people who were displaced and really had not a lot of options, number one. Maybe insurance was not how they thought it would be. And could probably, possibly a handful of people, if not a lot, could not even afford an architect or an interior designer. And so when it comes to people being taken advantage of, or even just limited options, we thought, gosh, what's this going to look like when our city is pushing rebuild quick, rebuild swift? Our biggest concern was rebuild what? Because is this going to look like a bunch of tract homes? And even with Save Iconic Architecture, for the past decade, our big spotlight has been to go against the soulless box, which comes in for cheap builds, lack of design, and our city just deserves better. So this initiative, which is in the umbrella of Save Iconic Architecture and Design Leadership Network, we actually decided to create a pattern language book, which is a field guide for California building. Because what we see all the time is a lot of people just don't know what they don't know about architecture. And so what is a Spanish revival, or what is and so we set out to take a deep dive in the research and documentation of these eras that shaped Southern California living. And it was so interesting what we developed. And initially, the pattern book is called the Golden California Pattern Book, and it focuses on Spanish revival, colonial revival, California modern, which is more of a rustic modern, like a Ray Cape. even the case study programs were initiated in the Palisades. And so there's the new case. And so it's actually really stand up and contribute through a different lens. And that is, for us, it's a heart space. It comes from giving, but it's turning into more of a resource for the general public. So it's just the beginning, and this is online now. It just recently went live, and it's called the New California Classics.com, basically. So check it out.
Thank you.
I know. I feel like you were like being the first to know about it almost, because I believe you launched this last night,
yes.
right?
We had a town hall last night, and it was an incredible turnout of the community. And just to finish the styles, it's Cali Cod, which is again California's take on Cape Cod, and Palisades really has some wonderful nuances to it. And I wanted to point out that California has taken all of these revival styles and actually made their own twist as well. So we're in a new generation even of those styles, which are definitively California, and we're really proud to kind of point that out and recognize that in the last century that California does have its own defining look and feel. And that's when you talk to people who lost their homes, a lot of them say, I just want what I had. And that it's capturing that essence in this book.
Fantastic. So basically I'm telling you this is a scoop right here that we're all hearing. And I was diving through your website last night, and I can't wait to look at more. But speaking of deeply Californian things, William, I believe you're a fifth-generation Californian. Is that correct? Did I do my research correctly?
You did, yes.
Fantastic. Well, and I'm sure that all of these waves of architecture that we're talking about, the things that have kind of given rise to other buildings that are so key in our community, are things you know deep in your soul as well. I'm just very happy to share that you, as a firm, had contributed plans to Case Study 2.0, which kind of builds off this architectural legacy that we're so proud to have in Los Angeles. And so, William, I wondered if you would detail a little bit of what you put into those plans, because I know that you're having so many conversations as an architect with clients who want to build fire-resilient, yet refined buildings. You're exploring new ways to use materials in different ways. I'd love to hear some of the questions that have come up for you and some of the solutions you've put into the world already.
The thing that I thought was so great about the Case Studies 2.0 when they first rolled it out was that 40 architectural firms submitted plans for it. So there's this sort of guaranteed variety of vision for the houses, because at first this happened, I thought, oh my God, it's going to look like condos, right? Everybody's going to sort of build the same thing. And what was so special about that is you had all these different takes on variety, style, constructability, what sort of fire resistant looks like, what are the ways to design for it. So in a way, it's sort of its own pattern book for what you could do to solve the problem that way. And we were excited to be part of it, and I think what I saw as an opportunity was to figure out a way, because the people that reached out to us initially all were kind of interested, like you said, of having something of the character they had before back. And it was like focusing on how do you build in a style that was traditional, because most of them had that, and that wouldn't catch on fire again, wouldn't just be kindling for another fire, right? So, and so we did a deep dive into lots of materiality to accomplish that. Like things that, like how do you build eaves in a way that they're not just, going to catch on fire right away? And what are some of the materials? Like there's this sort of fiberglass reinforced concrete that can be done in a very subtle texture that looks like real wood and works, and doesn't look like Disneyland. And so, and what window systems are responsible? What wall sort of build up, helps to ensure, because no one who's thinking about building wants to lose their house again. That was traumatic enough. So it's been nice to work with people. We've had several families who are interested in building our case study program, which for that, I think that we really focused on a prototype that would create more usable outdoor spaces in the yard. There's sort of a recessed courtyard in ours, so it's not just a single block on a site, but it's sort of a C-shaped house that where the mass isn't so much. And people had a lot of creative solutions. So I think that, even if people don't use specific houses from this group, it helps to inform like what you can do on these sites, because they all work with the setbacks, the heights, the envelopes you can do. And it's also, I think, been a good resource. I was excited to participate in it. So.
Yeah, and again, I was out looking at some of these houses last night and looking at how they are designed for different envelopes of space. Yours is kind of on a narrower lot. How can you solve for that? Things like that. Others take a different take. So it's really cool to see the catalog of options that are out there.
Right.
And on the breakdown of like the materials that are used and how that can help, the eaves that you mentioned, how they don't trap embers, things like that. Things that we're all thinking about now, and I love that. Yeah. William, I want to keep it on you for a minute because you had mentioned there's a project of yours where you're kind of recreating an 80-year-old house. Is that correct? And recreating it in a way that can be fire resistant, yet look exactly the way it was before.
Yeah, so we have a house that we did. We had a house that we did like 20 years ago, and it was really sort of very strictly California, Italian Mediterranean revival. And the idea, and even the owners when we were building it thought, well, we want to build a 100-year-old house, but also one that will last another 100 years. And it was really built like with every sort of, beautiful custom-made hardware that was authentic to the period and all these things. And they raised their 4 kids there. And the day after the fire, when it was still smoldering, they called and said, we want to rebuild the house. We want to rebuild it exactly how it was, and we want to be first in line. Wow. And they said it was like sort of no looking back. We lost everything. We lost all the kids' school homework. We lost all the photos. We lost all this stuff. But we want it back. And so we charged, ahead immediately getting started. And I started getting email from the kids who are in their 20s and early 30s saying, can I have exactly the same tile that was in my bathroom? Can you find that? And so it's been like, you work on these projects and it was a multi-year project and you end up loving your clients. You end up having the same kind of like being invested in their goals and what they want to do. And so it's been such a treat to re-engage with them who had become good friends over the years. And then even just to see how important the environment that, say, the kids grew up in was to them, even though they've flown the nest, and that to them, that house and in that configuration and that vision is sort of key to their identity still. So all these things were great learning that isn't really addressing your question, but it's like addressing sort of the motion of people that have lost houses and projects and that, and we're involved in a number of fire rebuilds now. We lost a dozen houses of our own in the fire. Some of those we're rebuilding or some for other people, but the work that's been satisfying is to figure out how to sort of address and sort of be an enabler for them to get back what they want. In some cases, it's not the exact vision, but it's to create another place that feels like home for them. So it's all these other things.
Wonderful compliment that is perhaps if you grew up in a space, that feeling of home. And that's ultimately what it's all about, after all, too. To open this up a little bit, too, Gwen, Jamie, I wanted to ask both of you, what's impressed you the most about how the creative community has responded, yourselves included, in the wake of these wildfires?
Well, I think, again, experiencing it firsthand, but also secondhand and just beyond, I mentioned our kids' schools. Like Anthony Kiedis donated $150,000 to, because it's a music and art school. So it's just, this is Hollywood and this is LA. And don't underestimate Los Angeles and the resilience of our community, truly. And I was, again, watching people donating clothes and to where there was nowhere to put them anymore with all the volunteers. And there was just this overwhelm of support. And I think the biggest thing is if you've built one house in the city of LA, you know how long it takes just to get a permit or just to go through documentation and all the motions of engineering. And so imagine that by the 1,000. And I think watching Altadena and Palisades, they're very different animals in this process. And so that's interesting as well. I mean, what have you seen?
From our standpoint, and it may be a little different, but I just feel like the creative ways that Altadena kind of came up to save what we had. We have all these small little Craftsman bungalow homes that we lost, and these architects and designers came together and made the Foothill catalog approachable for any person that wanted to. They could jump on board for a really reasonable price, rebuild the exact same thing. I don't know if you guys know of Jane's Village, but it was this area where E.P. Janes, he was an architect, and he did these kind of storybook homes. We lost so many of those, but they have been able to recreate some of those exact homes, and it's just been really special. On the rebuild side, every week people are getting together talking about rebuilding in Altadena. We hold things at the library, and the resources that have come together have just been really unbelievable for our community. And then just with us kind of coming up with this, we're going to move homes, which is just insane. We're actually on the third home. We've moved 2 already, and we're on our 3rd one right now. So, and in terms of building, we're kind of going backwards. I kind of say we're like the anti-vaxxers. Because we, obviously our homes are not built to code. When we move them, we actually don't have to abide by Title 24. We move the houses, and it's literally just considered a remodel. So for those who can't afford to build new, it does save money. It saves about 1/3 of the cost of a new build. So you could most likely get more home for your money by building it or by moving a home and not rebuilding.
What is the cost to move? We've talked about this even with Save Iconic Architecture, and we're dissuaded because they're like, oh, that would cost so much. So hearing this, and I was so excited that you've done this.
Yeah.
Was that realistic, or how they dissected it? Even I imagine the wide load trailer on the road, and sometimes that's not feasible.
No. So moving the house itself, it was $125,000. That was just for the move. We probably had about $40,000 in construction, like deconstruction costs. And then we have our foundation and all of that. Right now, we are at about $400,000, but we have 90% of the materials for our home already. The wood is redwood, which you just can't find redwood anymore. The house was built with these massive 2x14 floor joists and rafters, and the structure itself, you just couldn't get the wood that you just couldn't find them these days. So there's so many things that are invaluable, but on the flip side, they're old windows, and they're not sealed properly, and so we're kind of working backwards on figuring out materials for the shear walls and all of that. So I think if we can do fireproofing underneath the shingles and work kind of backwards and do it as smart as possible, we can fireproof our house the best we can. We got some really amazing news this past week. There's a historian, her name is Kathleen Perricone, and she is on Instagram. It's called Before the 101, and she was the one that had posted about our house, that she was trying to save it. But she recently found, again, within the last week and a half, she found our original photo of the home, the original rendering for who the house was built for and who actually built our house. And it was a company called the Milwaukee Building Company, who ended up, they are Meyer and Haller, who ended up building the Grauman's Chinese Theater and the Egyptian Theater, and so many iconic buildings in LA. I'm going to start crying. But so we have just kind of this architectural gem on our hands right now, and we're trying to treat it as such. And so we're trying to pay homage to that, and but yet do it responsibly. So
that's honestly so cool. I'm so excited that you're the next steward of this house that deserved to be saved.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's kind of another sweet story. So the house was already moved once before. In 1948, this woman, Alice Blackburn, had owned the house. Well, she was renting it, and then the 101 freeway came in, and so she got this notice that the house was going to be torn down, and she was like, oh, hell no, you're not tearing my house down. So she bought the house and moved it. They had removed the roof, and you have to remove the chimney too, so they patched everything up. And so in the middle of the night, she invited 150 people over to have this party in the house. And so they partied in the house while it was moving down the street. So Life magazine covered it, and so Kathleen Perricone did this deep dive and found these amazing photos of, this woman was just a character. Doris Day was in the house, and she was with everybody, and everyone dressed up in costume, so I'll invite you guys when our house is done. We'll have drinks and dress up and whatever you want to dress up in. But there's just so much history behind it. And then when she moved it, they go back the next day to pick up the roof, and the roof apparently got stolen. So we didn't know what the roof looked like, and we were going off of these old photos, and we were racking our brains for the last month and a half going, we're kind of at this point where we have to get a roof on our house, but we don't know what it looked like. And again, this last week, she found this rendering, and it just is pretty magical. So,
I just want to add to this story too that Gwen has been patching the tarp that is over her roof all this week during the rains too.
Yeah.
During this whole saga.
Yeah.
So.
The last rains were terrible. They just put tarps up, and all the tarps failed. We lost the floors to the upstairs, and we had to rip out all our ceilings, and a lot of the wood is kind of damaged, but we're just in this remediation. Use billboards. Spread the word. No
matter what. So this is wild. I didn't even know that story about the roof getting stolen. That's nuts. That is crazy. Well, okay, so if you're not planning to scoop up a house and build it and move it over to a new neighborhood, and maybe you should, and maybe you shouldn't, but regardless of whether or not you're doing that, I feel like we're about to enter this whole period of building. Everybody's going to be building, because we're at the point, really, at both these neighborhoods where there's just been a lot of, insurance discussions, scraping of the ground, getting things ready, and not a lot of actual shovels hitting the ground yet in general. There's been some instances where people are ahead or behind, but there's going to be an explosion of that. So I wanted to ask you all, what concerns you about this period that we're about to move into? What would you encourage people in the community, designers, builders, architects, and beyond, to consider as we move forward into this next phase? Anybody gets to take it.
I think mindfulness is important. I touched on that there is a mad dash for land grabs or development, or the person who just got a contractor's license maybe 3 months ago somehow, are opportunists. But there is quality work, and I think there's so many good people out there too. But it is mindfulness, and it is an opportunity to really look at shaping the neighborhood. We've been discussing a lot about not only individual lots, but streetscapes, land usage. If we had a town planner, that would be really great, actually, to be involved with this, because with the Palisades, there weren't many alleyways, and it's just kind of, if we could take a bigger snapshot from 1,000 feet up, I think it would be done very differently. But really, it's one by one. But how do we do that and have a conversation together? So Team Palisades is here, even, for example, and they are talking about their blocks as a unity. And it's kind of just looking at building differently, but also in a mindful way. A lot of times it's about the bottom line or price per square foot, which is super important, but how do you maximize that and have it be aesthetically sensible?
I would say really the most challenging aspect and the thing that's been a gating item for a lot of the projects we've been involved with is cost. It's like so many people in Altadena and the Alphabet Streets in the Palisades didn't have insurance that covers, for in most cases, covers today's cost to rebuild. And so it's been really difficult to kind of, even design with even the case studies 2.0 houses, they were really intended to do that. So more recently, there's some groups of builders, like they just announced this Builders Alliance for the Palisades and Altadena both, where a number of big and small builders are getting together so that they can buy things in bulk, they can improve pricing, they can improve, because to build like a bunch of 2,000 and 3,000 square foot houses by individual with an individual contractor just loads those projects with too much overhead and administrative fees. So we really need, and I noticed here today there's a group called Builders Coalition that's also for the Palisades, but if there's some groups of contractors that can get together and in doing such save significantly on the cost of construction, that starts to make it work. And they really need, some of these houses need to be built for more like $600 a square foot than $1,000 a square foot. It just doesn't work otherwise. So I'm encouraged by that starting to happen. So I think that will unlock kind of a significant percentage of projects. So.
And I think, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but with a lot of the insurances, they're paying for architects, but they're not paying for us. They're not paying for designers, and it's been really frustrating.
It always happens.
And
like the
I'm like,
stepchild.
who knows? So it's been really frustrating. And I think that the other concern for my clients and things that are brought up in conversation is just if they start buying now, where do they store things? I mean, normally you have a home or a garage that you can have things shipped to your house, and now we're in this position that even if we try and take advantage of these deals that are happening now, which a lot of my clients need to in Altadena, where are they going to store it, and are they going to want to ship right away, and how do you facilitate this process? And so I beg my appliance people and tile vendors and all of those to figure out ways how to keep those things for our clients as long as you can, just so we're not in a position where we have to rent storage units and worry about people breaking in, because most people are not on their property. And it would be devastating because there are people out there that are just not doing nice things. But it's not common, but it is happening. So
There's always opportunists,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
yeah, they haven't broken in our trailer, but
Okay, thank goodness.
there's nothing to steal. But
Well, and I love that you're having those conversations as well, because I actively worried about that myself, just in the sense that, something happens, and we see this all the time. Something happens, and there's an outpouring of goodwill, and there's an outpouring of like gifts or deals or help, and then it kind of trickles away. And there were a lot of brands even that I talked to that I was like, don't put a hard line on it for a year. It needs to go beyond that, because here we are. It's nearly a year, and there's not a lot of people that have houses yet. So I'm hoping those conversations are resonating. And if anyone out here in this room has connections for those, like, put that word out there as well. Which reminds me to say that, I really wanted to end our talk with some calls to action in a sort, because again, this community, we are still all in this together. Like I said first, we cannot talk too much about this. So Gwen, to put it back to you again, I'm curious, we've gone through your whole story. We've even gone into some of the pricing behind it. And thank you again for sharing all of that, because I think that's incredibly important to see, is this a feasible thing? Is it something that Save Iconic Architecture could get involved in too, to make it a feasible thing? There's still a lot of just collaboration that I think is one of the things that I'm more excited about, whether it's people coming together on their own blocks to share resources, or whether it's putting a resource out into the world that talks about architecture, or putting new ideas out into the world about, hey, like, what about saving a house, etc. So for people who wanted to follow your path, what would you encourage everyone here in the greater design community to do? And I'm thinking like things like pull permits, etc. What can we do?
Yeah, pulling permits is a huge thing. I actually have been talking with Kathleen Perricone about this. There is a company out there, Givning, and they are doing a great job of putting together a house of or a list of houses that are being torn down. But I would actually like to get one that would be public. You have to be a part of. You have to sign up with them in order to get the list. But I think it's critical that the list be shared with the public in order to save more homes, because even if a developer wanted to do that, I would encourage a developer to move a house and instead of building new, because like you guys had talked about, there's a lot of really awful developers out there that are going to build some pretty terrible things, and we've already seen a couple pop up in our neighborhood, and we're a little devastated. But keep something out of a land, build up to code, and all these things. Alternative. You have to have a lot of grit. I would not recommend this for everyone, because you have to be a willing participant in this, and you have to be really flexible and have really long hours, and it's definitely different than a rebuild. Your constitution has to be a little gritty, and if you don't have that, or if you don't have time, then a new build is much easier for you. But so.
Is there a list out there of homes marked for demolition? Is there a way to discover that?
No, so you have to go through the city. Everything is, if you were to go in the city of Santa Monica, for example, they have their Santa Monica Conservancy. You can pull demo permits from any city, but the likelihood of you having time to go through and look at all of those, there's two people on Instagram. Again, I had mentioned Kathleen Perricone. Before the 101, she's actually actively trying to save homes, and so is another Instagram person called Esoteric. They are bringing attention to both residential and commercial properties that are being torn down. So I applaud them both. If anyone of you know anybody that can do the same thing, it's really important that Los Angeles knows what they are destroying, and they really, they'll put it up for maybe a month or two, and then if no one claims it or if no one wants it, then they allow them to tear it down. And just even knowing that our home in particular was going to be torn down, and now to know that a prominent architectural firm had done it, and if someone did a little sleuthing, they would have found that this is something architecturally significant, and it was just going to end up in a landfill. And
your home with the cool owner who thumbed her nose at the 101 project, right, and drank champagne as they moved the house across town. Yeah.
And all of this would have been lost and been stuck in a landfill somewhere. So that angers me when I found that out. It frustrates me. So I'm hoping more people can do it and encourage people to do it and spread the word. And recycling is important.
I feel like there's an informational hole here that needs to be filled somehow.
I do too.
So anyway, TBD. Mm-hmm. We'll have to see what happens with this. Mm-hmm. Well, and then Jamie, I'll turn it over to you too. And I'm like, collaborate, but also, yeah. I wanted to ask you, where can people find out more about the New California Classic Guide and what's next for you in that effort?
Yes, newcaliforniaclassics.com. It is a free online resource that is a field guide of Southern California architecture. So it's a guide to rebuilding in character styles, and the other styles, I keep on rattling them off, but we have Craftsman, modern, Palisades, Spanish Revival, Colonial Modern, California Ranch, which is actually a really cool viewpoint and that's what's so great about stepping back and kind of resetting the needle on this building record, because it's all become so homogenized over time with spec houses and people's interpretation, especially a builder interpretation that we've all kind of just allowed to happen in our neighborhoods, and we just live with it. I think this is an opportunity for people to raise the bar in design and architecture And this field guide, it started as a heart space, again, something that was to give back to fire victims. But what we have realized is that it's such a good information to our state and city treasures that we all need a little reminder of what these styles were originated from, or what the true details are in window styles, massing envelopes, to tile work, light fixtures, because once it goes into interpretation, I think a lot of people are misinformed. So if you could have a guide that is accurate and maybe academic somewhat, it's a nice tool to have. And this is all free online. And as it grows, we do have a resource section. So when we're talking about materials that are actually fire resistant and landscape architecture, which is a huge topic, and Patricia Benner, the brilliant landscape architect, contributed so much insight onto landscaping for fire resilience on this, the new California Classics, and she designed fire-resistant landscaping, plantings and trees for each of those styles. So have you ever imagined doing landscape based on a style of architecture? Well, that's what she did here, and so it's a beautiful just documentation and approach to rebuilding, but also a way of thinking. So I highly recommend checking it out. And then it's continuing to grow, and we welcome input and suggestions and collaboration. So it's just the beginning.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go check out exactly what Patricia did as well too. That's so cool. We thought about that aspect. Well, and William, to put it to you for some big thoughts at the end, too. I mean, your work has already determined so much of the aesthetics of the city. So I'm curious, what you feel like is, I don't know, I guess just the important thing for the design community to keep in mind, architecturally, aesthetically, as rebuilding efforts move forward.
No, it's a big task here, but
only hard questions.
I would say big thoughts. What seems to be the most important is really to concentrate on kind of quality of design, like they're saying. I think the thing that will be so helpful is if people follow things like this new California Classics to help inform choices they make. I think to avoid falling in the trap of building homes that 10 years from now we're going to look back and say that's so 2025. And I think it might be easy to fall into that trap. And that's why I was encouraged by all the stylistic options and solutions in the California 2.0, but also going back to the basics, to the foundation of California, because it's always like in the traditional work that we've been doing the last 10 years or something. I've really realized that it's that kind of in between. When people are saying it's kind of traditional, it's kind of modern, or it's this transitional stuff that we talk about, I think that stuff dates. And I think that if you're going to invest in a new home, that if you either go with something that's truly modern, if that's what you want to do, one, or two, if you're doing something that stylistically is Spanish or Cape Cod or whatever, really go back to the foundation of things, because if you do it in that manner, it's not going to date. The same way for 25 years I've lived in Hancock Park, and I always marvel at how those houses have never dated. You look at them and they were done with integrity and quality stylistically, and they didn't try to do it part one way and part the other way, or part modern. And I think that that's what will bring long-lasting value and enjoyment to whatever people build. But it'll also create stylistic variety within neighborhoods, rather than make them feel cookie cutter. And so I think it's an opportunity to sort of reimagine the city that would be great. So anyway, that's what I would suggest people do. So.
Well, and truly, that's one of the best things about LA. It always has been. All these different things. And I love that you got to the heart of what does timeless mean? Because it's kind of one of those je ne sais quoi things. How do you define it? Yeah. But really getting to the foundation, which is why I'm so glad you put this guide together.
It's authenticity. So it's about being true to who you are or what it is. If wood wants to be wood, it should be wood, and we can do it in a fire-resilient way. But it's going to complicate it all.
Talking about as well, Gwen, like why? Now I'm going to get everyone crying. But I wanted to thank you all again so much for being part of this conversation. And I always get kind of hyped up by this. Like, I'm always like, we are not out of the woods per se, but we are on our way. And that's always the best thing to be reminded about. Like, these resources, these ideas, these changes, these materials still keep coming out. They still keep changing. And thank you for all that the three of you have done to share your stories, to give back, to put ideas out there, and to contribute to this incredible community that we're part of. So I'd like to invite all of you to continue this conversation. We're going to have a reception at Carlisle, and we're going to toast to the continued resiliency of Los Angeles. And there's nothing I'd like to raise a glass to more than that. So before we go, Josh is going to say a few more words, but then I'll meet you all there, and I can't wait. Thank you.
Awesome. First of all, can we just share a little bit of love with our panel here, because... Thank you, Kelly, William, Jamie, Gwen. I told you, an incredible conversation, right? And at times not so easy to hear, but important. And that's why having these conversations is so important, and having WestEdge Design Fair to be the forum where these programs can take place is amazing. The stage was incredible. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, for providing such a remarkable experience. Thank you, Kim Gordon Designs, for crafting such a remarkable stage and working in partnership with Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, which brought in Best Buy and the Geek Squad using Hisense screens to create this feel of movement. Absolutely incredible. Make sure that you are subscribing to Convo by Design so that you receive all of these talks to your feed the moment that they're published. Thanks for listening. See you next time.